Going to the gym is one of the best things that you can do for your body and mind. It makes you stronger, releases endorphins, and boosts your confidence. There is, however, one drawback when it comes to going to the gym, and it quite literally can kill you. Listen to this. A few summers back, there was a time when I was going to the gym at least 4 times a week. I was a senior in high school, and summer break was coming up, so I had to get in shape for the beach. It was also a time for me to unwind and release some stress. Well, that all changed during this story. I was at our local gym, doing some leg presses when this big guy, Aiden, came up to me. Aiden was your typical gym macho man. Don't get me wrong, the guy was ripped and could squash me like a bug, but he was the guy who wore string tank tops, screamed during every exercise, and thought he was better than everyone else. Anyway, Aiden came up to me and asked if I could spot him during his bench press. Even though I was not a fan of the guy, I told him yes and followed him over to the bench. I could see why he needed a spotter. The man was literally benching 350 pounds and said that this was a startup weight. As Aiden was lifting away, I was standing behind him spotting him, and that's when I noticed this other guy. He stood a good distance away, staring intently at Aiden. This guy was skinnier, and he wasn't really wearing gym clothes. He had on blue jeans and a maroon crew neck with sneakers. I thought he was just staring at Aiden working out because he was so strong, but then I noticed this guy wasn't blinking, like he was laser focused on Aiden. Then, as Aiden was still doing his bench presses and I was still spotting him, this guy started to walk directly towards us. He stands in front of Aiden, who at this point was benching 400 pounds. I was about to ask him if he needed anything, when, out of nowhere, this guy jumps onto Aiden's lap, puts his hands on the bar that Aiden is lifting, and shoves down with all his might. Aiden, who did not see this guy coming and was caught off guard, lost control of the bar and it came crashing down on his neck. This part may seem gruesome, but when the 400-pound weight came crashing down on Aiden's neck, there was a sickening crunching sound, and his neck literally snapped like a toothpick. I could actually see the life in Aiden's eyes leave. Horrified that I just witnessed a man die in front of me from a weight bar, I looked up at the man responsible. The man was now sitting on the ground next to Aiden's lifeless body, breathing deeply and closing his eyes. He looked up at me and calmly asked for me to call the police. He said, "Don't worry, he won't run." And he didn't. He sat still as a statue while I ran to the front desk for the police to be called. When the police eventually got there, he admitted everything and even his motive. Turns out, the guy Aiden had slept with this guy's girlfriend. He had found out a few nights ago while going through her phone and seeing the spicy texts back and forth. So, he planned on coming to the gym that Aiden went to and to quite literally kill him while he worked out. I think the guy ended up having to go to a mental institution for the next 30 years or something. Crazy. I even had to do some therapy myself after seeing someone being killed right in front of me. But yeah, who would have thought that going to the gym was a place where you could literally die? Be safe. Staying in shape and being healthy is vital for our well-being. But when does that become too far? You're about to find out. Back in 2021, I was working as a personal trainer for a gym in my hometown. I was pretty new to the job and was willing to take on any clients to help build my book. I ended up taking this guy Phil as a client during the new year, and as part of my fitness program, I always ask what is the goal the client is trying to accomplish. In this case, Phil was trying to lose at least 100 pounds. Now, for context, Phil was a very heavy-set man. He worked a desk job and lived a very sedentary life. In fact, coming to me, he admitted that this was the first time that he ever stepped foot into a gym. Which, more power to him. Sometimes starting something new can be intimidating. Anyway, I had been working with Phil for about a month, and even in that short amount of time, he had lost almost 10 pounds. You would think that was great, but according to Phil, that was not great at all. During our workouts, he would often make comments saying that my system wasn't working, that he isn't losing his weight fast enough. There were actually multiple times during our workout sessions that I had to calm him down because he was giving himself a panic attack about not losing weight fast enough. But even through all the ups and downs, I thought we were making some good progress. That was until the incident happened. It was almost 9 p.m. I was at the gym, waiting for Phil to arrive for his 8:30 appointment. Phil did have anxiety issues, but one thing that he never had a problem with was being on time. By 9:15 p.m., it was completely dark outside, and I was about to pack up my things and head home, believing that Phil was not going to show up for his workout session, when the gym door opened and Phil walked in. I said hello to Phil and smiled, but that smile instantly turned into a frown. Phil had walked into the gym as pale as fresh snow. He had this forced smile on his face, but what stood out the most was the blood. Phil's entire shirt was dripping in fresh blood. Wobbling into the gym, Phil came up to me, his eyes unfocused, and held out some kind of bloody meat. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Look, I'm losing weight faster than ever. Why work out when you can just cut it out?" That's when I saw the knife in his other hand. He started to laugh. That's when I realized the piece of meat Phil was holding was some of his cut out stomach. He laughed again and then collapsed in a pool of his own blood. We called an ambulance immediately. It turns out, Phil had become so obsessed with losing weight that he decided the fastest way will be to literally cut the weight off himself. He cut so deep into himself that he actually punctured parts of his small intestines. Thankfully, the surgeons were able to save his life, but he has since been admitted to a psych ward to test his cognitive and mental abilities. I have not seen Phil since. And for all my people out there trying to reach their fitness goals, please do it the old-fashioned way and not the way that almost kills you. Have you ever heard the term roid rage? If you haven't, it's pretty much uncontrollable anger or violence resulting from steroids. You may have heard this term in a joking manner at times, but in this story, this was no joking matter whatsoever. Listen to this. When I was 18, I used to work at the local gym right down the street. It wasn't the best job, but it paid decently and it kept me busy. Now, I don't say this to brag, but I would get hit on a lot, mostly by older dads working out. Most of it was harmless. I would get "wow, you're beautiful" almost 5 times a day, and I was always good-natured about it and never rude back. That was until I met Jimmy. Jimmy was a few years older than me, and I guess the best way to describe him would be steroids. He was huge, like so big it almost didn't look natural. He also had a short temper. There were times when someone would accidentally walk in front of his camera when he was taking pictures of himself in the gym mirrors, and he would explode with anger. We nearly had to revoke his membership multiple times. And unfortunately, Jimmy was starting to take a liking to me. At first he would make comments about my eyes and my smile. Pretty harmless stuff that I've never really felt uncomfortable with. But then his compliments started to get more aggressive. He would say my figure is perfect. He would ask how low I can go if I did a squat. But what really crossed the line was the day he came up to the front desk where I was working, pushed aside my papers, and told me that I needed to be his girlfriend. His arrogance and cockiness were a complete turnoff, and I'll admit, I was a little harsh back. And I told him that I'll never date scum like him, and that he could never amount to the boyfriend that I have now. And I could tell Jimmy wasn't rejected too often. He started to almost shake, like he never heard the answer no before. He slammed his fist onto the counter and shouted that I was a slut and my boyfriend was just using me, and then stormed out of the gym. That was the first time I was ever really afraid at my job. I told my boss what happened in the break room, and she said if it happens again, they're going to revoke his membership. Sadly, this is not where the story ends. That same night, I was the last one to close the gym. After I turned off all the lights and locked up, I waited right outside for my boyfriend to come pick me up. I was scrolling through YouTube videos, killing time waiting, when footsteps came from behind me. By the time I turned around to see who they belonged to, I was staring face to face with Jimmy. Before I could yell or scream or do anything, Jimmy pinned me against the wall. I tried to play it cool and not piss him off. He asked me why I was so uncomfortable. I tried my best to stay calm and say I'm not. Jimmy shook his head in disbelief. I tried to get out of his pin, but he pushed me back harder onto the wall. He made me look him in the eyes. Then he asked why I wouldn't be his girlfriend. He said no girl ever rejected him. He's been waiting out here all day so that we could talk. At this point I was crying. I saw headlights behind Jimmy, who didn't seem to notice. But now, his grip went from my shoulders to my neck. He was saying again how no girl ever rejected him, when, suddenly, Jimmy was struck in the head and fell to the ground. My boyfriend was on top of him now, pounding his face until there was blood on his fists. My boyfriend told me to go wait in the car while he called the police. And after statements were taken and police looked at the gym security footage, Jimmy was charged with a second-degree misdemeanor and 6 months in jail, and also a permanent ban from the gym. Whenever I tell this story, I am so thankful for my boyfriend coming to my defense. If he did not step in when he did, I have no idea if I would even be here retelling you this story. I have not seen Jimmy since, and I pray that it stays that way.